Hello, everyone, and welcome to my thoughts about The Last of Us, Episode 5, Endure and Survive. Just like all my previous reviews, I will give my non-spoiler thoughts at the beginning, and then later on, I'll dive deeper into the episode with all the juicy details, and I will, of course, give you warning before that happens. So, my thoughts without spoilers. Wow. This episode was... wow. So much happened, and so much action and intensity and cool moments and very sad moments. After the episode was over, I just had to sit and not move for a few minutes to let myself process it all. This episode was great. If you've played the game, this is the part in which we meet and get to know Henry and Sam. And everything that happens with them in the game happens in this episode. But I won't give it away for people who haven't played the game. But if you have, then you know what I'm talking about. But let me tell you, the show delivered. It was just as impactful as the game, maybe even more so because it was real. I mean, real people as opposed to computer-generated characters going through it. And this was a super tense episode too, with an insane action sequence. A sequence that is in the game, but the show leveled it up a lot. And I mean a lot. I think my jaw dropped at the beginning and stayed that way to the end. Last episode, I had complained that there wasn't enough action, but this episode more than made up for it. And I can't really put much up on the screen for you guys to see without spoiling something, so sorry about that. But anyway, this episode wasn't without its faults, but I will talk about them in more detail in the spoiler section as usual. And there really aren't many. This episode probably has the fewest number of faults out of all of them so far, in my opinion anyway. Does that make it my favorite episode? I don't know. It's definitely my favorite one where action and suspense are concerned. And there were some character moments as well, just not as many as episode 4. I think Episode 4 still ranks as my most favorite in regards to character moments and growth. But, you can't have every great thing happen in every episode, and this one focused more on the action, and that's fine. It was done very well, and there were some very iconic moments from the game translated onto the screen in very satisfying ways. There were some departures from the game as well, none of them that I really disliked. Some that I wasn't sure were necessary, but they didn't ruin the experience either. Overall, this was probably the most solid episode so far, maybe tied with the first episode, and I really can't say much else or show much else without giving away spoilers. So let's get into that now. If you haven't seen the episode yet or played the games and don't want to be spoiled, save this video for later. Then come back and tell me what you thought of the episode once you watch it yourself. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. All right, let's get into this. So the episode starts with a flashback to 10 days before the end of episode 4. And we see the downfall of Fedra in Kansas City. There's all Kathleen's people doing terrible and very graphic things to all of the Fedra officers. Things YouTube won't even let me show in my video. This is definitely the most violence we've seen so far in the show, and I was honestly surprised to see it, especially this much of it. But it was just a short scene, and the showrunners said that they put it in there because in the game you can see the signs of this uprising against Fedra, but it's just something that's, just left over from that event. The format of the TV show allows them to show us things that we couldn't see in the game, since the game is only from Joel's point of view. Anyway, then we follow Henry and his little brother Sam through the entire flashback up until they meet Joel and Ellie in the skyscraper. It shows them hiding from Kathleen and her goons, and they are aided by that same doctor that Kathleen interrogated and killed in episode 4, which is why she interrogated and killed him. And he hides them in an attic and brings them supplies and stuff, but of course, we know what happens to him. And when he stops showing up and Henry and Sam run out of food, they are forced to leave their hiding place after being there for 10 days. Now, there is a big change from the game in regards to Sam. In the game, Sam is around 10 or 12, but they made him much younger for the show. He's only 8, and he's also deaf. In the game, he's not deaf. And my first reaction was, why in the world did they make him deaf? What does that do for the show? What does it do for the character and the plot? No, if you're going to make a change from the original, there should be a good reason. It should matter, it should mean something. And through the entire episode, I couldn't figure out the why, because it doesn't change the story or the plot at all. It does change some character dynamics, since no one but Henry can communicate with Sam without writing notes to him. But that's all the change I noticed while watching it. It seemed kind of superficial. It wasn't until after the episode was over and I watched the behind-the-scenes featurette that plays after the episode that I learned the reason behind the change. Apparently it was the showrunner Craig Mazin's idea to make Sam deaf. And the reason was to make Sam more vulnerable and dependent on Henry, and also to just change up the dynamics so that Sam and Henry's interactions with each other aren't so similar to Joel and Ellie's interactions. And I guess that's a reason? I'm not sure if it's a great reason. I think that Sam, as a child, is plenty vulnerable already without adding deafness to the equation. And I think that Sam and Henry's interactions with each other in the game were different enough from Joel and Ellie's already. So I really don't understand this decision to make Sam deaf. I don't think it was necessary, and I don't think it really brought enough to the show to make it worthwhile. I don't know. It's not that I didn't like it. It's fine. It was just kind of arbitrary. It was a bit annoying to have to read all the subtitles whenever anyone's talking with Sam. And conversations between Ellie and Sam took way longer than they would have if they had just been able to talk to each other normally, since they had to write everything down, and it took longer to do that. But those are just small annoyances, I guess. It didn't make me enjoy the episode less, really. I just question the necessity of it is all. Anyway, the way that Henry and Sam meet up with Joel and Ellie is different than in the game. In the game, Joel and Ellie just sort of stumble into them, and they mistake each other for hunters at first, and Joel almost kills Henry. But Ellie stops him when she notices Sam, since the hunters don't keep kids around. But in the show, Henry and Sam are just about to leave the building that they've been hiding in, and Henry looks out the window first to check if the coast is clear. And he witnesses the confrontation between Joel and the hunters in the laundromat, which is just across the street. He sees Joel take down all those hunters, and he realizes that Joel is someone worthwhile to have as an ally. In the show, Henry is not a violent person. He's never killed anyone before. He later tells Joel that pointing a gun at him was the closest he's ever come to violence, and so he needs Joel and Joel's fighting experience to help him implement the escape plan he already figured out. So, Henry and Sam followed Joel and Ellie up to the top of the building with the intention of introducing themselves. And that's where we catch up with where episode 4 left off. And actually, I really like the way this played out better than in the game. For one thing, the game is always from Joel's perspective, and so we can't switch over to Henry and see what he's doing. And so they had to just have Joel run into him randomly because there was no other way to show it. But in the show, they can have those multiple perspectives, and it opens up all kinds of better storytelling possibilities, and I think that's great, because it gives Henry more agency and takes out the random coincidence of their meeting, so I liked that. So Joel and Ellie share some of their food. They make some really awkward introductions. Joel's grumpy, as usual, and the next day, Sam tells Joel his plans for escaping the city, which are similar to what they are in the game. The goal is to reach a bridge and get across the river, but instead of sneaking through a checkpoint, the plan is to go into some tunnels to get out of the immediate area. Tunnels that Kathleen's people think are filled with infected, so they never go there. But Henry heard that they're empty. Joel is not fond of the idea of possibly meeting infected down there. And as I was watching this scene, I realized that this is actually the first time we see Joel interacting with other people besides those he already trusts. Interacting with strangers, other than Ellie, of course, when he first meets her. But she's a kid, so I feel like it's not really the same thing. So this is the first time we see him interacting with another adult that he doesn't already know. And you can really just see how bad his social skills have degraded over the last 20 years. Just something I noticed. So they sneak out to the tunnels and travel through without encountering any infected, which I was kind of disappointed about, because when they came out the other side, I was like, wait a minute. They just spent a whole scene foreshadowing a possible infected encounter, and then nothing actually happened? What the heck? Of course, I learned why later on. But in the moment, it was disappointing and anticlimactic because in the game, they encounter a lot of infected down there, and so I was kind of expecting something. However, they did add stuff down in the tunnels that I loved, and that is in the game. They find that old abandoned sort of safe house school thing where a small group of families had lived for a long time. This is in the game. Although in the game, it's filled with infected. But it's the same. And it even has the same pictures of a castle and flowers painted around the entrance. And there's a nice Easter egg here too. The picture of Danny and Ish. The same exact picture you find in the game in this location. In the game, you can find all these notes and letters and things that tell the story of this guy named Ish, who sort of starts this community down in the tunnels. And he's a brave defender and apparently a really cool guy. And you can follow his story for a while throughout this part of the game. And this little storyline is a fan favorite. And I get that they couldn't put all of that in the show, and people who never played the game wouldn't understand the significance of that picture. But for the fans, it was a nice thing to see. So they decide to stay in this place for a while to rest, and Ellie and Sam look at comic books. So I guess Ellie liking comic books is going to be a thing in the show after all. Last episode, I thought they had taken that part of her character out because they didn't have her reading the comic book in the truck, which is where her love of comic books is established in the game. But it's nice that they put it here. It gives Ellie and Sam something to bond over, since Sam loves comic books too. And he teaches her some sign language, and they play soccer, which they do in the game too, a little bit. It's nice to see Ellie actually being a kid for once. And Henry isn't as uptight as he is in the game. In the game, it seems like he never wants Sam to have any fun. And he always tells him to be careful and to stop doing things. So in the show, he's a little bit more relaxed about stuff like that. While Ellie and Sam are playing, Henry and Joel have a conversation. Sam tells him how he came to be the most wanted man in Kansas City, and we finally learn all the things that I had been wondering about last episode. Henry and Sam did live in the QZ, and Kathleen's brother, older brother, was the leader of the resistance against Fedra. But Sam had leukemia, and Fedra had the drugs to help, but the only way they were going to let Sam have them was if Henry gave them something very valuable. And so Henry told them where to find Kathleen's brother, and they captured him and killed him. And that's why Kathleen is so hell-bent on getting revenge against Henry. And it's also how she came into power. She basically inherited the role from her brother, or at least that's how I understood it. And we even get this scene where Kathleen talks to Perry about her brother and what a great guy he was. He was a good person and wanted her to forgive Henry. But she's not a good person and she can't forgive Henry. And Perry tells her that her brother was a great man, but he never accomplished anything. She did. She made things happen in regards to getting rid of Fedra, and Perry and everyone is with her. So I guess that explains that. It explains just why they follow her, I guess. I'm still not convinced, really. I just don't think she has the leadership presence, you know? It's hard to believe that out of all of those people, she is the best there is to lead. That she became the de facto leader after her brother was killed. You know, just because she's the leader's sister doesn't mean that she would automatically inherit his role after he dies. It would go to the person most qualified for the position, the person that everyone else would naturally follow. And she just doesn't feel like that person, you know? Also, this scene just annoyed me. The scene where she's in her old childhood bedroom getting all emotional about her brother, it annoyed me because I didn't care. I don't care about Kathleen. In fact, this episode actually made me not even like her, not even a little bit. She's a psychopath, willing to kill anyone and everyone who crosses her, lying and making false promises to get them to talk, and when they do talk, she kills them anyway. Willing to kill children simply because they are with Henry, even though it wasn't the children who killed her brother. I mean, how in the world did she get this way? She grew up in a QZ, probably not killing people her whole life until this insurrection, and her parents must have been good parents if they managed to raise such a kind, generous, and forgiving man as her brother. And yet somehow she turned out to be a demon? I just don't buy it. And she's not just nasty to her enemies, she's a jerk to the people who work for her, too. She constantly talks down to and patronizes Perry, and yet he sticks by her, does everything she tells him to do without question, and defends her with his life. Why? She doesn't inspire that loyalty at all. So, I'm still very disappointed with Kathleen. I think her character was a failure, and this scene annoyed me because it felt like it was trying to get me to feel sorry for her and to care, but I didn't. And so I just wanted this scene to be over because it was way too long, and I would rather see what Henry and Sam and Joel and Ellie are doing. I mean, they cut out a bunch of the time Ellie and Joel spent with Henry and Sam, a lot of scenes and moments from the game that I would have loved to see in the show. But no, instead we get a 5-minute long scene about Kathleen getting emotional about her dead brother that we've never even met. Anyway, I think that this was the thing that I liked least about this episode. But, moving on, Joel and them all get out of the tunnels, and they're walking through a neighborhood, and the neighborhood looks really familiar to me. It looks like something from the game, and then someone starts shooting at them, and as soon as the first bullet flies, I know exactly which scene this is, and I am thrilled because I had no idea they would put this scene in the show. The sequence with the sniper. I love that they put it in the show. I thought that they would create a different circumstance in which Sam gets bitten because I thought the sniper scene was a little too gamey for the show. So I was really pleasantly surprised that they kept it in. Of course, it is different from the game because the scene in the game is gamey. They don't have half a dozen guys that Joel has to kill before he gets to the sniper like they do in the game. The sniper is the only guy there for some reason. And so Joel has to just go around the houses and go in the back door without any trouble. And I get that. You can't have it to be so gamey. Joel's not Superman like he is in the game. And the sniper is this old guy who shouldn't really be having this job as a sniper. I mean, he's old. He probably can't see very well. They already established that he's a really bad shot. So why did they give him this job? I have no idea. Anyway, in the game, he's not an old guy, and he attacks Joel, and they fight before Joel finally kills him. But in the show, Joel begs the guy to just give him his rifle and let them leave. He doesn't want to kill him, but the guy doesn't because it was his job to prevent them from escaping. So he tries to shoot Joel, but Joel is quicker and kills the guy. And he learns that the guy had already reported their whereabouts to Kathleen, and she's on her way there. And then we get the main set piece of this episode, the main action sequence. And it's insane. First, Kathleen and her people arrive with a big truck that plows all the cars out of the way. And Ellie and Henry and Sam have to run and hide from it. And Joel watches through the sniper scope and manages to shoot the driver of the plow truck, and it crashes and blows up. And then just as Henry is surrendering to Kathleen and she's about to shoot him, the plow truck starts sinking into the ground. And then out of the hole comes a horde of infected, hundreds of them. And Kathleen's people frantically shoot everything they have at them. And the next several minutes is just chaos, and it's amazing. And we finally see the bloater. It comes up out of the ground and starts smashing people left and right. And when Perry shoots it, it doesn't even notice. It's unstoppable. And it comes after him and Kathleen. And Perry makes Kathleen run while he, for some reason, stays behind to try to kill the bloater. But he runs out of bullets, and the thing grabs him and tears his head off. And that is exactly what happens in the game if you get caught by a bloater. So that was great. And Joel proves himself to be an excellent sniper as he one by one picks off every single infected that comes close to Ellie. He tracks her as she runs around trying to find cover, and he's really good at anticipating her next move. Ellie climbs through the open window of a car, and Joel kills all the infected that gets close to the car, except for one little child infected, who climbs through the window and into the car, and it is the creepiest thing I have ever seen. The way this little girl infected, who even has pigtails, moves and contorts herself through the car is it's just the creepiest thing. This is that new infected type that they said would be in the show that wasn't in the game. So, not really a new type, since it is a clicker, but in the sense that we've never seen a child clicker before. But I guess there would be child clickers, though while playing the game, I actually never considered that. Anyway, Ellie gets out of the car and traps the child clicker inside, and the whole time, Joel is super worried about Ellie. He can't shoot that gun fast enough, in his opinion. And then Ellie notices that Sam and Henry are trapped under a car, and clickers are trying to get to them. And so Ellie runs over and stabs each of the clickers in the neck with her knife, just like she does in the game. And Joel keeps shooting all the other ones. And she gets Henry and Sam out, and they run. But then Kathleen stops them. After everything that's happened, she still wants her revenge. I mean, her whole town is dying behind her, and all she cares about is shooting Henry. But she gets her comeuppance really quickly when a different child clicker pounces on her and tears her apart. And that's creepy too. And that's the end of Kathleen. Boo-hoo. And I guess that we know what happened to all the kids that were in that tunnel safe house that they found, which is horrible. And then the camera pans up as Joel and them run away, and we just see the devastation of Kathleen's people getting completely run over by the infected who keep pouring out of that hole by the dozens. No one is left alive. So much for that revolution, huh? It lasted only 11 days. Anyway, so our group makes their way to an old motel where they stay the night. Ellie and Sam look at comic books together, and Joel offers that Henry and Sam could travel to Wyoming with them, and Henry is really grateful. And we get a version of the scene from the game where Sam asks Ellie what she's afraid of. But, of course, they have to write down everything they want to say since Sam can't hear. And he's got this little magic doodle pad thing that he wears around his neck, which I thought was pretty clever, since notepads are probably pretty hard to come by and you'd always be running out of paper. Anyway, the conversation is pretty much the same as in the game. Sam wants to know what Ellie is afraid of because she doesn't seem to be afraid of anything, but she admits that she's afraid of ending up alone. And he tells her that he's afraid of ending up like the infected, afraid that there's still a person inside that doesn't have any control over themselves. They didn't include the part of the conversation where they talk about heaven and whether or not the infected people go to heaven, but that might have actually gotten a bit tedious for the show simply because they're writing down everything they're saying rather than speaking it, and it really did take a while to have that conversation, so they probably just cut it down for that reason even. And in the game, Sam doesn't tell Ellie that he got bit, and they don't find out about it until the next day, but in the show, he actually shows her the bite. And Ellie thinks that maybe if she puts some of her blood on the wound that it might cure him. She so wants to be able to help him, but she has no idea how her immunity even works. I mean, it's just an experiment, you know. What if it does work? Maybe there's some way I can help him. You know, she wants her condition to mean something, to matter, and she wants to save Sam's life, of course. But anyone who's played the game knows that it doesn't work, even though this part isn't in the game. And the proof of that is revealed in the morning when Ellie wakes up and Sam has been completely taken over by the cordyceps and he attacks Ellie. And the scene plays out pretty much the same as in the game, where Joel tries to get his gun to shoot Sam, but Henry gets it first and won't let Joel do anything. And then Henry shoots Sam. And the acting and the tension in this moment is perfect. I was on the edge of my seat, even though I knew what was going to happen. And of course, Henry suddenly realizes what he's done, and he can't live with himself. And so he shoots himself, and it's just really, really sad. And in the game, it cuts away after this and skips a bunch of time. But in the show, it stays here. And we see Joel and Ellie bury Sam and Henry. And Ellie puts Sam's magic doodle pad on his grave, and she wrote, "I'm sorry," on it. And you know she's sorry because her blood cure didn't work, and that weighs heavy on her. And I have a feeling that Joel is going to bring up the note at some point, maybe in the next episode. He'll probably want to know what she's sorry for. And I'll also be curious to see if they have one of those comic books in a future episode. Like Ellie finds one and it reminds her of Sam. Because now those comic books have a deeper significance to her and some very good and very bad memories associated with them. It may change the way she thinks of those comic books. And yeah, I'll be curious to see if they thought of that and put it in the show. And as Ellie walks away, Joel stands there staring at the graves, and I can just imagine him thinking that this could be him and Ellie someday. He has to admit to himself in this moment that he's gotten attached to her. There's no denying it anymore. And he knows that he will do anything to protect her. And he also knows that he might not be able to face the pain of losing her. He can't do that again. He can't go through the loss of another child again. And this moment brings Joel closer and closer to his turning point. He is now faced with a decision to let Ellie in and fully commit to her no matter what the cost, or to let her go so he can avoid that inevitable future pain. And we'll probably see him make that decision in the next episode, and I am really looking forward to that because it's one of my favorite parts of the game. Now, before I wrap up this review, I wanted to take a moment to mention a few small details that I noticed and liked. When Joel and them are all just going into the tunnels, Joel tells Ellie to get her gun out, and she looks at him sort of sheepishly and digs into her pocket for it. And Joel looks at her like, I thought I told you to keep that in your pack. And Ellie looks back at him like, yeah, oops. But he just lets it go. I thought that was a funny reference to the previous episode. When Joel and Henry are talking in the underground place, and Henry is telling Joel about Kathleen's brother, a brave, unselfish, and forgiving guy, a great guy, the kind that you would follow anywhere, he asks Joel if he's ever known anyone like that, and Joel gets this thoughtful expression, and I just know that he was probably thinking about Tommy. And also in that same scene, Joel is watching Ellie and Sam kick the soccer ball around, and he looks down at his watch, which he always does when he thinks of Sarah. And then he tells Henry that if he was collaborating with Fedra to save Sam, then he gets it. Joel would have done anything for Sarah, would have done anything to save her life, even if that meant betraying allies or doing other questionable things. And he's beginning to realize that he will do the same for Ellie. And I love the subtle looks between Joel and Ellie. It's like they can read each other's minds sometimes. During the infected fight, when Ellie notices the open car window, Joel notices her looking at it, and he just knows that she's planning on hiding there, and so he starts clearing a path for her. And earlier, when Henry is telling them about his plan to go through the tunnels, and that all the infected have been cleared out, Ellie asks when, and he says, like 3 years ago. Joel and Ellie exchange this incredulous look with each other, like they're both on the same page, and they both think his plan is crazy. And then there's a moment right before the sniper starts shooting at them. They're walking through the neighborhood, and Henry boasts about his plan working, and Joel complains about so much talking, and the camera focuses on Ellie for a second, and she smiles as she looks at Joel, because she sees Joel just being Joel, gruff and irritated and unfriendly, but she knows another side of him now. She knows there's more to him than that, and I think she's come to respect and even like both sides. And the look she gives him is a fond one, and I thought it was cute. I love the moment when Joel decides to leave everyone by the car so he can sneak up on the sniper. Ellie is terrified of him leaving her, and he asks her if she trusts him, and she says yes. All of these are small moments that may not seem to matter when surrounded by all the huge things that happen in this episode. But for me, they're big things, at least for Joel and Ellie and their relationship. I like that the show didn't ignore their relationship in favor of all the action. It took a back seat, yes, but those little moments are still there, and I noticed them. I especially enjoyed watching Joel protecting Ellie with a sniper rifle. She was the only thing on his mind in those moments, and he was terrified that he was going to lose her. Pedro Pascal's acting was perfect in this scene. And I also have to give props to Bella Ramsey. Her acting was pretty great as well. She looked genuinely terrified in the action scenes, and genuinely shocked and horrified when Henry shot himself. Anyway, I think this was a really great episode all around, with just a few annoyances concerning Kathleen, but I don't think she ultimately ruins these episodes. They're just scenes I'll probably skip next time I watch them. I'm really looking forward to the next episode because, according to the trailer for the next one, they will get to Jackson, Wyoming, and so much good stuff happens there in regards to Joel and Ellie's relationship, and I can't wait to see what else happens as well. That is going to do it for this video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Tell me what you thought of this episode and the changes they made. And was there anything in the game that you wished made it into the show that didn't? Let me know down below. I will see you in the next one, and until then, remember to play safe, play nice, and have fun. Bye, everyone.